there's a gap of about $700 billion worth of financing that's required by 2030. And I'm really happy that we're partnering with Goumbook on this, because it's not only about the accelerator program, it's about what we learn from you, and the doors that opens for future financing opportunities as well.
I'm Tatiana Antonelli-Abella, founder of Goumbook, and you're listening to Forward Talks, Conversations That Matter. Welcome to Our Land, Our Future, a special mini-series of Forward Talks focused on land restoration and combating desertification. I will be speaking to regional and global stakeholders who are spearheading innovative efforts to protect and restore land. I'm joined today by Ali Tariq Khan, Senior Advisor for ESG Matters at Saudi Awwal Bank, a leading corporate, institutional and trade finance bank in Saudi Arabia, with a strategic partnership with HSBC Group. Ali is a seasoned banker with 20 years of experience, with strategic positions at Standard Chartered Bank and the HSBC Group, across multiple geographies worldwide and in the Middle East. In his current role with SAB, Ali's ESG responsibilities include disclosures, governance, policy, training, net zero commitments, and leads multiple industry initiatives as well. We started by talking about SAB's focus on ESG.
When we think of impact, obviously as a bank, our impact comes from our lending and financing activity. So what that means is that we want to engage with clients more on topics like sustainability, and we want to look at sustainable financing and how much of our book, that the lending book, is contributing towards sustainable financing. So what you'll see is for SAB, we're probably the only bank in Saudi Arabia with a sustainable finance target. And we're quite committed to that target from the top of the house to individuals within the bank. And our CEO, he was previously the CEO of HSBC Singapore, and he did a lot of work there with the Monetary Authority of Singapore on the topic of sustainability, ESG. And since he's arrived here over the last couple of years, he's been the chair for the Saudi Central Bank SAMA's ESG Banking Advisory Committee. And that committee looks at topics such as issue risk, taxonomy, green and sustainable taxonomy, disclosures, solutions, and data. And that these are the topics we're trying to address from a financial sector perspective. And then for us at SAB, it doesn't just end there. When we talk about ESG, we realize it's something that needs to be embedded in the departments and functions as well. So when we designed our organizational structure, we made sure that we are putting people with this knowledge across different departments. And recently, we've launched a graduate trainee program. And similar to other graduate trainee programs, what we intend to do is take fresh graduates from the market with different disciplines, put them on a 1-year program to upskill them on sustainability topics, and then place them across the organization to really embed this in decision-making at all levels of the organization to incorporate sustainability within the work. And then the last piece is the partnership with HSBC as well, right? So given the fact that we are a strategic partner with HSBC, while being a domestic bank in Saudi Arabia, we almost feel like there's an ownership on us to bring the best practices and the thought leadership to Saudi Arabia when it comes to sustainability.
I really appreciate when you mentioned the youth and the social impact. And I know that SAB has been also working in partnership with KSA in Saudi, and that you are actually driving entrepreneurship right at the middle of Saudi youth. Can you tell us more about your Takadam initiative?
We've been partnering with Takadam for several years now. And it's basically to empower youth, empower entrepreneurship, and we this year I believe there are about 25 different ideas that are being shortlisted through this accelerator program. And the whole idea is to bring these ideas to life, to empower youth, and to really motivate the new economy, so to speak, through this initiative. As a bank, when we think about our responsibility and our impact, right? We also think about the financial awareness within the market and the education side of it as well. So Takadam really plays into that specific stream of our efforts from an impact perspective.
And also looking at another aspect of ESG and sustainability, something that for Goumbook actually is very dear to our hearts, is also the environmental awareness and impact. And SAB has also engaged in a very particular initiative, supporting a native plant incubation center.
Yeah, I'll give you some backstory on this, right? So we basically partnered with Marouge, which is an execution arm of the National Center for Vegetation Cover, and that partnership and that is basically part of the Ministry of Environment here in Saudi Arabia, and that partnership was around planting 1 million trees in Saudi Arabia, and that basically contributes to the 1 billion tree target for Saudi Arabia. So that was our sort of million trees plantation, and that the thought process behind that was, you know, carbon sequestration and obviously giving back to the community and afforestation, reforestation as well. But then when we ventured forward in that initiative, we going back to that concept of impact, we thought about what else can we do that can have a greater impact? Because when we started discussing the tree plantation initiative, what we realized was that a large number of trees that are planted in Saudi Arabia, they actually don't survive. So then we said, okay, why not we go for a sort of a seed bank, a propagation center that we can set up that can study the native plants in Saudi Arabia and improve the longevity of the plants that actually are planted and they actually survive in this environment. So we felt that from an impact perspective, that would also be a great initiative. So we signed off on that and we launched that last year, and it's making good progress. And we hope to see more progress on that front, I think, in the coming year.
We love it. And we hope to hear more about it. Ali, with Saudi Arabia's ambitious sustainability initiatives under Vision 2030, the G20 Global Land Initiative, and as you just mentioned, the Saudi Green Initiatives, what notable collaborations or industry shifts have you observed as a result of these goals? How do you think these initiatives are reshaping the economic sectors?
So I think the first thing I would like to mention here is from a landscape perspective is that we obviously operate in a system, and that system is not just limited to Saudi Arabia. It's a broader system. It's a financial system. It's an economic system, and obviously it's an environmental system as well. So these global initiatives and global regulations that are coming up, they have an impact on Saudi. They have an impact on the financial flows to Saudi as well. But that's the global landscape. From a local landscape perspective, there's a lot of momentum behind the Saudi Green Initiative and Vision 2030 as companies, corporates, and institutions align to this. And then obviously the conferences that have happened recently, the COP in Egypt, the COP in UAE, as well as the desertification COP that's going to happen in Saudi. A lot of these conferences are driving the dialogue, and they're accelerating the focus on climate and environmental topics. So as an example, and again, this is no different to what's happening around the world, right? So for example, we're all aware that the energy sector needs to transition, contributes a large component of the greenhouse gas emissions coming from the energy sector. Saudi Arabia wants to lead by example. So the ambition here in Saudi Arabia is to have 50% of its energy mix from renewable sources by 2030. So and that's quite ambitious, and they already have awarded, if I'm not mistaken, roughly around 20 gigawatts worth of projects within the kingdom for renewable energy. So we see a large momentum and shift in that sector. And similarly, in the transportation sector, which is another big one, we're seeing another ambitious target from Saudi Arabia, that to have 30% of the vehicles sold within Saudi Arabia to be battery electric vehicles. So, and this shift is being seen across different sectors as well. So the Ministry of Economy Planning, as I mentioned, they also have one of the initiatives uh, on the Champions program, where they selected 19 different entities as champions in the market, and the agenda or the mandate for these champions is to support or mentee three entities each to improve their disclosures, to improve this on the sustainability goals, and to improve on their sustainability strategy as well. So I see there's a lot of increased momentum and dialogue here in Saudi Arabia, and we're seeing the industry shifts happening as well. And I think the last point I want to mention here is the social change as well, right? So there's the within the local landscape, people don't really realize this outside of Saudi Arabia much, but 75% of the population of Saudi Arabia is under the age of 45. So it's a very young population here, and there's a massive social and cultural shift that's happened in society here over the last 6 odd years. And there is an expectation from corporates, companies, and organizations, especially when it comes to sustainability. So we're seeing that on the ground. So the landscape is quite buzzing, I would say.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, I mean, with the kingdom hosting so many events related to sustainability, to climate. It's driving a very important agenda. And with hosting COP16, this is a very significant milestone for Saudi Arabia. It's about the coalition, actually the convention, of combating desertification and land restoration. It's the largest ever meeting of UN CCD's 197 parties, the first to be held in the Middle East region. So it's really nice because in the past few years, we've seen in the region, these firsts, and it's impactful to have this specific event in Saudi, with the Saudi Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture appointed as the president of COP16 CCD. So what are the economic and social implications of land degradation and desertification? Because this is definitely something we all know about, but we don't really know the implications and the consequences.
From an economic point of view and the challenges, and I'll speak very specifically as from a bank perspective, right? When we, as a financial institution, we think about risk, and obviously we think about credit risk as the first aspect of risk, because we're a lender. But then as we evolve, we started to think about environmental risk, and within that environmental risk, we think about climate risk, and within that climate risk, we'll think about the physical aspects of climate risk within our portfolio. So, when we talk about land degradation and desertification, so there's obviously a physical aspect of climate risk that is tied into this. So that's the economic side of it from a bank perspective. But then, when you think about land degradation, the first thing obviously you think about is the agriculture impact to that particular sector. Now, we're in Saudi Arabia, we import a lot of food items from outside. So as land is degraded, that is a risk for us around food security, and it's not about just land degradation and desertification in Saudi Arabia, right? If this is happening even outside of Saudi Arabia, that impacts Saudi Arabia as well. But there are larger economic impacts as well, right? Because as 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 we see, the soil health decrease, land being degraded, less output in terms of agriculture output, we see an impact on price, pressures on price, and these pressures on price have a social impact as well. So the economic is tied directly to the social side of it as well, and then that social impact can lead to greater inequality, poverty, migration, and social instability as well. And then, you also can't forget that there's the aspect of increasing cost of transportation and supply chain disruptions as well, right? Just at COP29, there were some conversations about um, there are certain hard to abate sectors like heavy transportation, and maybe put some tariffs on the heavy transportation, shipping, and airline sector. And if that comes true at some point, even countries that are not, core uh, agri countries, for them to import food, like Saudi Arabia, will become a lot more expensive.
Definitely. And I think also Saudi comes from a different, I would say, situation whereby it's a country that has different climates, and not many people know about it. And there is actually there are forests in Saudi. There's a strong agriculture as well compared to maybe neighboring countries. And the challenges faced in Saudi sometimes are actually similar to other countries in North Africa, where the problem comes from land degradation and overgrazing. So there are similarities definitely that can be shared. So challenges, but also opportunities in finding solutions. Um, in terms of taking action and how the financial institutions can support the private sector, and through also the whole analysis and risk assessment that you've been doing and that you're doing, how is SAB leveraging these insights, and how can they impact different sectors?
So I think, again, just going back to that concept of, we're all connected globally on this particular topic, right? The fact that within the financial sector, there is a recognition, realization that land degradation, biodiversity, and nature are quite key and core topics. We saw in the global biodiversity framework that it was identified that there's a gap of what $700 billion worth of financing that's required by 2030. I think given a baseline of 2021 to tackle biodiversity. And the World Economic Forum risk report, the recent one, it ranks nature as the fourth highest risk from a long-term business perspective. So banks, I think there's a global recognition of this, and banks are also recognizing this. There are about, I think, 125 institutions that have signed up to the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge, and together they have a combined assets under management of 19 trillion euros, and the pledge is to reverse nature loss by 2030. So these are great ambitions that we're seeing within the finance. The way I see it is we need private finance, and we need private finance to come in to bridge that gap. So these initiatives are really encouraging from a global perspective. From a SAP perspective, we have existing sustainable finance solutions, but they're focused more on green financing and social financing, right? The nature-based financing and land degradation financing, they require real structured solutions. And the challenge there is, right, typical private finance, that's not what they've been financing, and that's not something they're familiar with. So I think there is a bit of a knowledge gap. And these conversations that we're having today, as well as conversations that will come through COP and the partnerships that will come through COP. So these are really important because we need to understand what the research is telling us. We need to understand what the science is telling us. So we need to kind of bridge that gap. And the way I like to think about it is that we need to come up with unexpected partnerships, right? Things that don't naturally come together to really come up with the right solutions. And really, I'm really happy that we're talking, and I'm really happy that we're partnering with Goumbook as well on this, because it's not only about the accelerator program, it's about what we learn from you and the doors that opens for future financing opportunities as well. And then we already spoke about the native plant incubation center that we're working on. So, we do these initiatives and partnerships to broaden our own perspective and understanding on the topic so that we can do more from a financing perspective as well.
We're definitely very, excited to be working with you and HSBC on the MENAT Regenerative Agriculture Program. And as you say, this is a partnership that was maybe unexpected, where we decided to team up to support research to go into entrepreneurship. And I believe that last June, when we saw the results of, supporting these researchers who have access to scientific data and to solutions, and to see them looking at the world of entrepreneurship from a different point of view, being themselves the actors, bringing the solution to life, was so rewarding. So we're very happy to launch the second year of this venture program with you, with more impact even from last year, going into more countries in the MENAT region, having Saudi taking a leading role as well. One of the winners, by the way, was from Saudi last year, and this was really incredible. One from Egypt, and one from Saudi, and one from the UAE, and all women. So that was another great win. So definitely, coming together as a social enterprise and two, global financial entities has come to an incredible result. Looking at something that was very new last year, I feel this year regenerative agriculture is a fact. We have it at COP16, but last year it was a bit of a buzzword and very new. It was kind of a big leap to go into regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, and really excited about this partnership for going into the second year and making it a bigger and a larger impact area for us in Saudi, but also for the region. And as we mentioned earlier, right, solutions need to come together and across borders as well. So, and you're right, it was a bit of a nascent topic a year, 2 years ago. It's gaining traction, but I think it's still complex, and it's not just regenerative agriculture. Like generally, nature-based solution topics are complex, right? And because they're so different based on the different geographies that you're trying to tackle for. It differs based on the different stakeholders that are involved in that particular solution. So, so these partnerships again, are so important because, we need to collaborate with people who really understand those topics. And this is where this ecosystem it comes together. But we also need to collaborate with people with boots on the ground, right? People who are really there doing the work that can tell us, that in order to solve for this particular problem, these are the stakeholders that are involved, these are the complexities, so that, all those risks and barriers can also be uh, looked at and addressed right up in front. So, I'm so excited about this initiative, around promoting the research, technology, and really bringing a lot of these solutions to life through our program and our partnership.
This is interesting. Recently, I went to a business school, a global business school, to meet students from a master's in entrepreneurship, and I was there to talk about sustainability and climate. And it was a 2-hour session. The beginning, I had totally not interested students in front of me, and talking about nature felt like I was talking about something totally disconnected from their reality. When I asked them if they could ever think about working in a startup or in a business related to nature, they all said no. And when I asked why, they said, because we want to, we look at profit. We want to make money. And for us, that's charity. And I was really somehow it was kind of taking a big punch in my face, because I was no, nature is actually what sustains us. but there isn't any education at the moment globally, unless very few examples. But otherwise, mainstream education never talks about nature and how it's important to look at business and nature together.
It's true, right? Our conventional education systems, the way they are set up, they're not talking about nature and talking about sustainability. And I think it goes, if you kind of peel the layers of the onion, you realize that we have built an economic structure and a society which is driven by very specific KPIs like GDP as an example, right? That is a measure of success. So a measure of success is growth at without any consequences, right? Like without really holding accountable what is the cost of that growth. And that's the measure, and that's the economic system that we live in, that we operate in, that we work in today. And and that's been fed through us through the education systems. So I think there needs to be a radical shift that needs to happen. You'll see there are some ideas uh, that have come up. I don't know if you've seen Kate Raworth and her sort of donut economic model, and the planetary boundaries, to really complement and supplement the economic, uh, system that we work in. And I think those concepts need to be uh, better understood, better adopted, and put within the education system to help people understand that it's not growth at no cost. There is a cost, and we need to understand what that cost is, and we need to manage that cost. And then hopefully, we can do that with some of the work that we do here with this accelerator, with Goumbook. We try to do that with some of the other awareness programs like Taqaddam and so on. But I think we need to do a lot more, and this is just the start. Is how I see it.
Thank you. Yes, I really hope that leading by example will have more entities coming on board to bring the youth to be more aware of nature and how nature is at the base of profit in everything we do without even knowing it. Someone said in a podcast once, we give for granted resources such as water just because it rains, and so it's free, it's there, it's there's water, and we give for granted energy such as the sun because it's there and it's free, and we just take it, and somehow it's giving value to these nature based resources that it's the what you said, the mind shift that needs to happen at a global level, wider level.
And just on that point, so just on that point, right? And I completely agree with you. We're simple. Human beings are very simple. If we cannot understand a problem, it's very difficult for us to solve it. Globally, we have a commodity price for almost every commodity, but we don't have a price for water, as an example, right? And if we can't price water, right, we can't quantify what the impact of water is and how to manage that, as an example, right? So if we can't quantify, sunlight as the example you gave, right? So what is the cost of having sunlight, right? So I think these are the challenges. That unless we're able to quantify something, we can't really solve for it. And this is the basic challenge with nature-based solutions as well. Very difficult to actually quantify what the impact is. And if once you're able to quantify some of this, then you can potentially solve for it. I know there have been some frameworks that have come to the market, especially nature-based solutions around flood. But again, they're all so different. Right? Like, is it a flood on a coastal area? Is it a flood in a riverbank? Right? Is it a flood around a lake area? So is it a rain flash flood? Right? So, and all those different types of floods have different types of consequences and different stakeholders and different risks and different costs allocated to it. So it's very difficult to really come up with the right framework. And unless you're able to measure, you are unable to actually fix it, and you're unable to finance it. Because as finance people, we need the numbers. If you can't show me something in numbers, it's very difficult to finance.
True. And I think this is where there's a need for more collaboration in the region to start with, but also globally. I mean, we've seen that, talking about climate specifically, we are starting to look at the south of Europe facing very similar climate conditions as North Africa, for example. Other areas around the world would definitely benefit from solutions from the region, and at the same time, vice versa, we could benefit a lot from others. But somehow, data is something really hard to get and very valuable, but it's rarely is data shared, unfortunately. And that's where we really need to look into more events such as COP16 and hopefully seeing, new coalitions, new alliances within the financial sector, but also within the agriculture, within, other sectors. And you rightly mentioned also something important, such as the shipping industry, transportation. When we talk about land degradation and combating desertification, we also need to see the impact of this on the oceans. This is another whole, ecosystem that's so many times we don't consider enough, and that has huge implications from a financial point of view. But that's for another podcast. So, Ali, you recently attended COP29 in Baku, where there was an important and exciting announcement as Saudi Arabia launched a voluntary carbon market exchange to fund climate projects. Tell us more about that.
It was a really exciting moment for Saudi Arabia. It was a really exciting moment for Saab as well, as to be a participant in that launch. Now, I know there's this controversy around carbon markets, and because a lot of the activists, they want the companies and the organizations and the countries to be reducing their own emissions rather than buying carbon credits from somewhere else in the world. But we also saw that there is now some agreement on this point. I think Article 6.4 of the Paris Agreement was reviewed and agreed in terms of the methodologies of removal, and this is around a global voluntary carbon market. That will take some time to come through, but I'm really excited for Saudi Arabia for the launch of this market. So just to give you some background, the RVCMC, they held their first auction about 2 years ago in 22, and they held the second one last year, and this was the third one, and that was in a closed market space. Now it's now the exchange platform is a live market. You can actually sort of have live bids. You can sell and buy as you go along. So that's really good for Saab. We also participated in the auction. We purchased a set of carbon credits, to offset some of our own operational emissions. And I feel this is really valuable because what we saw was that a lot of these projects that will receive the financing, the money flow from us, are in the global south. So these are nature-based projects that are sequestering carbon from the atmosphere, and we can actually funnel money to the global south through this carbon market, which I think is essential, really, in the greater scheme of things. It just right now we were talking about the challenges of financing nature-based solutions, and this is one of the solutions as well to actually funnel flows through a carbon market and a carbon platform to the global south and to some of these projects. So I'm really excited about the exchange launch. I'm really excited for Saab as we bought our first set of credits as we come into this market. Saab also was the official partner for the voluntary carbon market to do the settlements as well. So we actually provided the settlement infrastructure to RVCMC as well. So we're really trying to partner on this particular initiative as well to make that broader impact.
So Ali, looking ahead, what are the emerging trends that you anticipate in ESG and sustainability within Saudi Arabia? What advice would you give to organizations seeking to enhance their impact and to contribute to a more sustainable future?
Yeah, and listen, with all these conferences and the dialogues that are happening, I do think is that we will see, the awareness and the knowledge really grow in the market and in the ecosystem of Saudi Arabia. But in addition to that, I expect that there's going to be increased transparency on sustainability as there will be companies and organizations adopting some of the reporting frameworks in Saudi Arabia. I believe with COP16 happening in Saudi now, there will be an increased urgency for action. So I'm quite excited about that, and I think that's what we can expect. As well as there's going to be a continued emphasis on renewable energy. We're obviously a big energy center in Saudi Arabia, and specifically on hydrogen. I think the country here is quite keen on that particular energy source. There will be an increased opportunity around the carbon capture, usage, and storage. I think Saudi Arabia is very nicely positioned to capture, to at least store carbon underground. Plus, there are certain concepts like circular economy, which Saudi Arabia is very keen on, especially on circular carbon economy to reduce waste and enhance efficiency, as well as an increased focus on adaptation and resilience as well. Because I think so far it's the focus has been more on the mitigation and avoidance side. And from an advice perspective, what I would say to other institutions and other sustainability leaders is, be bold, be ambitious, right? Assess and analyze and benchmark and baseline what you have, and don't be afraid to disclose it. And once you disclose it, you set targets and you're trying to improve on that. The other aspect is to collaborate, right? We spoke about this. We are all in this together, right? It's not about one company and one organization or one part of the system, right? We all need to come together to try and solve a problem, and we need to innovate, right? We can't depend on current solutions and solutions that we've been working on for the last so many generations. We need new approaches. We need new ideas. And we need unexpected partnerships, as I mentioned, and think long term, right? And I know that's very difficult, right, for this region. We are, we're young countries, so to speak, in relevant terms. We are in the growth trajectory. We can very easily be, consumed by short-term targets and goals. So it's difficult to get out of that short-term thinking, but we need to try and think long-term and try and think for the look at the bigger picture as well. And the last piece is to integrate sustainability into business practices and the mindsets and the models of the organization. So those would be some of the things I would have as takeaways.
Thank you for joining me today. This special series of Forward Talks is brought to you by Goumbook in partnership with Saudi Awwal Bank. I'm Tatiana Antonelli-Abella, and this episode was produced by Roya Mortabat, Samantha Kerouz, Nicola Lee, and Shira Desai. See you again soon.